Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here again. This is my third time doing this lecture here, and I'm always looking forward to having to talk with you, and also we prepared I'm going to prepare a discussion part on the second half of this lecture. So and I'm always interested in the ideas that come up during this discussion. So hopefully you'll be able to enjoy the talk as much as I do. So the outline of today's lecture is two parts. The first part will be sort of like a general explanation about research, and especially focusing on the commercialization part of the research. And I'll try to describe my experiences at KDDI, and hopefully I can give some useful talks about what's actually going on in research projects and commercializing the research efforts. The second part will be a discussion about around a currently ongoing research project that our group is working on right now. We are working on a AI agent dialogue system, like the applications like on smart speakers and so on, a application which can communicate in natural language with users. So I'm going to introduce that, and then we'll have a short brainstorming session about how we can utilize that idea, that technology to practical services. In the past two times, I have talked a little too long on part two, and the part one, and the part two was sort of usually shorter than I expected to. So I tried to balance out my talk so that we can focus on the second part a little more this time. So this is my brief self-introduction. I am currently working at KDDI Research. KDDI is how many of you know KDDI, the company? All right. Okay. Thanks for being generous. Anyway, KDDI Research is a subsidiary of KDDI Corporation. It's a research institute which is mainly focusing on R&D activities for KDDI Corporation. And also the company has people who are like market analysts. So there's a division of two divisions actually, which are focusing on analyzing business models and the markets and other things that are going on in the society right now. But I'm from the R&D side, and so since I've joined KDDI in 1997, which is a pretty long time ago, I have been focusing on research on the application layer, and mainly all kinds of things which are called AI right now. To be more precise, I have been working on a variety of research themes. One of my main interests and research activities was in the area of multimedia information retrieval. I will explain about this a little later on. During this activity, I met Ide Sensei at various international conferences and so on, which is why I ended up here right now. Other things which I also would like to explain later on is text analysis. I have been working on projects to analyze social media, like tweets on Twitter, and by developing those systems, my research expertise is mainly in machine learning and also natural language processing. Some other activities that I have been working on outside of the research part is pretty high variety. I had the opportunity to work in Silicon Valley a few years ago when we started an office there. I'll describe that later on as well. And I've also, after the Silicon Valley experience, which was a pretty nice experience for me, I decided to go and join other projects that are occurring out of KDDI. And one of them was the project called Shido, which is a government-based innovator incubation program, which was supported by METI, the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry, Keizai Sangyosho in Japanese. And also I have been writing articles about AI to ASCII, which is a major Japanese web media. So if you can Google like ASCII Hoashi, you'll find a bunch of articles that I wrote about various topics in the AI area. The articles are in Japanese, so if you're non-Japanese, please use Google Translate to learn what I was actually writing. And I also started a new thing this April. I started going to the Tokyo University of Science, and I've joined the MOT course of the university. So I am also a student right now. And so I know your feelings a little better than I did last year. And I've added a few items that I learned in my classes in the first semester, which hopefully will help to understand what I'm talking about a little more than my previous lectures. This is my very brief career timeline. I can't explain everything here, but basically, since I joined KDDI in 1997, I was working as a researcher in text and also multimedia, and a few years after that, I had to do some managing of research projects, and I've been working on that. And then after the Silicon Valley experience was in 2011, and from then on, this was an experience that let me know that research isn't everything, and there's a lot of like non-research issues that need to be taken care of if you want your research efforts to be commercialized. So my talk following this slide will be basically chronologically from around this part to some recent activities, and hopefully I can deliver some messages for future researchers or innovators, which I hope you are going to be after you graduate. So I will start with the first part, and the objective of the first part is to share my experiences and also try not to be like me, which is I like myself, but when I look back, there was a lot of things that I should have done. And as always, you kind of learn about those things after everything occurred. So one of my objectives is to share that those kind of experiences and see and let you know about what needs to be done to commercialize research projects. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I hopefully can tell you about what is necessary to make actual innovation from research. So that is the overall objective of this part. So I'll start by introducing some research activities that I've done around here. So So what I was doing back then was research in video analysis. This was way before deep learning, those kind of things. So the technologies were very crude. So this slide it introduces a conference called TrekVid. Basically, in this conference, what they did was they prepared a set of videos, like tens of hours of video, like from news programs like CNN and Al Jazeera and those kind of things. And then the idea was that to share a common video data set and also share a set of common tasks to researchers around the world, the researchers will be able to work on specific technologies about video analysis and compete with each other and have fun doing that, and ultimately the results will lead to various technical innovations in video analysis. Our company has been participating in this TrekVid contest for quite a while. We haven't been doing that recently, but we've been participating in a lot of things. The abbreviations here stand for shot boundary detection, is SBD. What that is to detect the editing points of a video. So in a typical video program, scenes switch, and and one camera shot is called a shot, and shot boundary detection is a task to automatically detect where a scene changes occur in a video. So that's very basic technology, which was difficult back then. And so we were participating in that, and we were pretty good at that. SS is story segmentation. What this means is that, for example, in a news program, in a typical news program, a program consists of various stories, like political news, sports news, weather, so on. In order to analyze video content, especially for news, the boundaries, how to detect the boundary of a unit of a story is important. And so story segmentation, the objective of story segmentation was to automatically detect where from and where to a specific story occurs in for example, a 30-minute news program. So, and my work was basically on that, and we had good results, which I'll explain in the following slide. Another thing which we were working on later on was is copy detection. So, for example, on YouTube, there's a lot of illegally uploaded videos, and there's a need in the industry to automatically detect videos that were recorded by normal people and uploaded on YouTube. So we need to do that efficiently and very accurately. And that was a task that we were participating in the latter half of our participation in TrekVid. So those kind of things was what we were especially participating during the TrekVid participation. There were other tasks like detecting what is actually going on in the video. For example, other participants, like for example, IBM Research and Carnegie Mellon and National University of Singapore, they were working on more advanced tasks like video search. So the idea about that was to input a query, like for example, playing tennis, and then from the video archive, the system should search for specific segments of the video where people were playing tennis in. So that required a lot of advanced video analysis technology, and on and on. So we were just participating in some of the tracks that were in the conference. And about the story segmentation part, this is ultimately what we achieved as the best result back in 2004. And so each icon here illustrates the organization which was participating in the specific task, and we were the red triangles here, and the x-axis is recall and the y-axis is precision, which are both measures to measure the accuracy of detecting the story boundaries. So simply said, high recall and high precision is good, equals good results. So the more closer to the upper right corner of the graph means good results. So, and we were here, which was better than all the other competitors. So, so at this time, based on the TrackVid data set, we were we had achieved the #1 accuracy in the world to detect story segmentations within a video. So we were kind of proud about that, and I also got a journal paper published based on this research achievement. So that was good. And then, so as a researcher, I was enjoying a lot of success. But when you become sort of like a manager, when you get promoted like to a manager kind of position in a company, you can't just do research. You need to contribute to actual business for KDDI. And that was like part of my job while I was managing my own project, and I had a few juniors working under me. So that's my job about the research manager, and since we achieved such good results in story segmentation, we thought we could sell this, and which leads to the episode about news story viewer, which is a not so fancy name we put as the name of this prototype product here. So since we were able to achieve #1 in the world on story segmentation accuracy, we thought that we can make a product out of that and sell it to potential customers like TV broadcasters who may want to archive the video and make it searchable for later use. So we made this. Well, this was like 2004, so it's I can't show you a live demo of this, but anyway, we built a prototype which can read a video file, and automatically detect where the stories occur in the video. And there was a little function here to change the boundaries if the system made mistakes in the decisions. And the idea about machine learning is to use this feedback data to further improve the accuracy from that point on. And we did a lot of things with this. We didn't just make this. We had some exhibitions. We presented this at CES, which I'm not sure if you know about it, but it's a customer electronics show, and it's held every January in Las Vegas. It's one of the hugest technology events in the world right now. So we had a KDDI booth back then, and this was one of the things that we exhibited there. And of course, we made a proposal about this technology to a lot of TV stations. So we had healthy relations with Japanese TV broadcasters. And also I had the opportunity to actually go to CNN headquarters in Atlanta to make a sales pitch about this product. But unfortunately, it wasn't accepted by anyone. So they were nice because they let us make the presentation about the product, but ultimately they didn't like it enough to actually implement it in their in their practical services. So what was wrong? What did we do? What were we lacking back then? So this is a post-analysis after we decided to fold the project. In the case of news story viewer, our supposed customers wanted 100% accuracy, of course, right? But they were not willing to provide the feedback data that we were expecting to utilize to brush up our video analysis technology. So the function here, we were kind of expecting that the TV people would be happy to provide us some feedback during this if the accuracy gets better and better, but they weren't willing to do that. Also, it's kind of obvious, but they wanted to integrate the product with the actual systems that were being used in their pipeline, and the last one is that they thought it would be cheaper just to buy manually annotated metadata. I mean, like if they wanted to divide a news story, a news program into segments, they can just hire people to set the boundaries, maybe even label the stories, and other than relying on a technology that may or may not work. So and that's only the case if that's going to be really necessary for their services. So in the case of story segmentation, the task was defined by the people who were holding the conference. So that'll mean basically academic people. But when you brought that to the actual market, the hypothesized demand did not exist. So researchers thought it was cool if we can develop an application which can analyze video and divide it in not just into shots, but also into units, stories, and which can be used for later video analysis. But at this time, that demand did not exist, and the core technology that we developed was unable to meet all these needs that the TV people were requesting about. So this is a failure analysis of my video research project. So next, I would like to introduce my Silicon Valley experience, which was very new to me. Until then, until this part, I was, researcher or research manager. So I did a few sales pitches to like TV broadcasters, and also I did similar things to other companies with some other research projects that I was working on back then. But basically, I was doing just that and writing papers and patents, the things that researchers have to do. So I was just, sitting in front of my my PC all the time to develop the technologies. But the Silicon Valley was a very different experience, so I'll talk about that. So this is a picture of our team that was sent to Silicon Valley in May 2011. I didn't get the permission from these guys to use this photo, but I'll do it anyway. So we were a team of 3 people, and I was the oldest and the highest position. So I was basically in charge of the entire project. And this before this, we didn't have a office or anything in Silicon Valley. So this was basically the first time that KDDI as a company made a presence in this area. And the building in the background here is called Plug and Play Tech Center. This is a nice place which we rented our office from. Basically, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the startup environment, but this is one of the oldest incubation centers in Silicon Valley. So, there were a lot of startups who borrowed offices in here, and also they had a investment team, which consists of a bunch of like venture capitalists, and there was also big corporates like us who were borrowing offices in this building and interacting with all the people in this building. And also Silicon Valley is a very open place, so we were encouraged to interact with all kinds of people there, and they held events like every month to like pitch events or like talks, those kind of things, and it was a wonderful experience. So they were saying that this building itself is sort of like a small Silicon Valley ecosystem in itself, and it was good for us because we didn't have a presence back then, and it was a good starting point because the people at Plug and Play were able to introduce us to a lot of companies and a lot of people. And KDDI Research, or the company name was different back then. It was called KDDI R&D Laboratories. We were, not the typical big company that had a lot of money and were looking for like investment opportunities in Silicon Valley. So our mission was to do whatever we can and find out how a company like KDDI Research can do things in Silicon Valley. Not being there was not an option back then because all the cool things that all the newest technology and all the innovations that were starting from Silicon Valley. So we needed someone to be there. But the problem is we didn't know how or what to do back then. So the mission of the 3 people here were basically we had 3 missions. One was to deploy KDDI Labs technology to the US or global market. Mission 2 was to accelerate ongoing research activities by collaborating with Silicon Valley companies. And the third one was to scout interesting companies or technologies that were going on in the Silicon Valley area. So there were 3 missions, and I was overlooking everything, but basically 1, 2, 3. They were like 1, 2, 3 kind of like. So one person had one main mission, and we were ultimately, and the trip was 6 months. So we were going there on a short-term business visa, and our idea was to explore during the 6 months period and hopefully look for what we can do as a company there. And ultimately, we focused on this part. That was after the 6-month period, because research is not that interesting for Silicon Valley people. They want to make money fast, so they weren't like not interested in research activities. But there was a lot of interesting things going on, and we thought from a technical standpoint, we can evaluate what the startup companies were doing, and maybe introduce the companies to KDDI Corporation and initiate a collaboration between us and them. So after a while, this became the main mission of our stay in Silicon Valley. So what we do about this part is we go to a lot of events and we try to meet a lot of startups, as many startups as much as possible. So this is a couple of pictures from a typical event. This was from TechCrunch Disrupt, which was and still is one of the biggest startup related events in the world right now. And this is the ex-CEO of Yahoo, Marissa Mayer, which was giving a talk when I went there a few years ago. And there was a lot of exhibitions where the startups were exhibiting their work. And the pictures here were the people that we actually interacted with back then. So they were like startup CEOs, and they were like CEOs of incubation centers and so on. So we got to meet a lot of people who were actually doing things to change the world, which in itself was very, very fun because there's all kinds of people, and there's very much different from the boring people in Japan. so that was very nice. And I have a ton of stories about my Silicon Valley stay, but I would like to introduce one thing. This was a stage at one of the TechCrunch events that I attended, and this man in the middle here is called Paul Graham. I'm not sure if any of you know who he is. He is the founder of an incubation center called Y Combinator, which is you can look it up later on. It's one of the incubation programs. So they held auditions for startups, and then the people who got accepted were thrown into the Y Combinator camp, and then they were drilled by mentors, and at the end of the 3-month period, they are able to demonstrate their achievements at the end of the program, and usually it's a high quality program, so a lot of the companies end up getting really big funds from venture capitalists and so on. So it's kind of like a boot camp kind of startup incubation camp, and he was the founder and a charismatic kind of guy in the community. So this event called Office Hours was an event at TechCrunch Disrupt where the event holders draw a paper from a box, and then the company who was luckily selected was able to come on stage like this and have a 4-minute talk with Paul Graham and get drilled in the front of a huge audience. So I don't know. I wouldn't apply for this, but it's Silicon Valley. A lot of people was looking for those kind of opportunities because it's kind of difficult to actually get connected with people like this. So this picture here is is Paul Graham and the other co-host of the event. And this was the startup guy who got selected. He was, if I recall correctly, a person from Taiwan. And he was originally from university. And he and his colleagues developed a technology which I don't remember, but it was something like advanced search kind of thing. So, so like in my Trakiveda experience, I think he did a lot of good work in the academic area, and he was kind of confident to bring that product to Silicon Valley. So, so the idea was for the startup person to make a 1 or 2 minute pitch to Paul Graham and then receive some comments, and then the next startup will come on stage. And he made a presentation about the search product, and this was Paul's initial comment. So I'll read it. I really remember this statement because it was so like it had a lot of impact for me as a researcher. So what he said was, so this is commercialized research. Ouch, he said. That kind of work is often a solution in search of a problem. That's what he said. So, so on paper, the technology kind of worked, but does the problem actually exist in the real world? Do customers actually want that kind of advanced technology? That was ultimately what he wanted to say. This happens a lot for researchers. And not just based on this experience, but meeting a lot of people and hearing pitches from good startups. They pitch the product, of course, right? Even if there's like really good technology behind the product, they don't start with that kind of explanation because it doesn't matter. What kind of problem to solve is most important, and the technology behind it is not that important. That was the kind of thing that I learned during my Silicon Valley experience. So, so the people who looked successful anyway, from a business standpoint, was they took this kind of like activity. First, they try to find the pain point of actual users. And then they try to find technology which can solve the problem. And develop new technology only when the technology is necessary. So this looks kind of obvious, but it's kind of difficult. I mean, like if you're doing work in technology right now, you kind of focus on the technology and kind of assume that someone will be using it. So it's kind of different. So, so the fact is, you don't need new technology to make a good product. There's all these stories about, Apple making iPhones, which is just a collaboration of existing technologies blended in a nice way. So all this stuff that's implemented in that kind of device is not all that new. Maybe the experience is new, but the technology itself was mostly existing, and the design was the point for that. So in Apple's case, there was no actual users back then when they started the smartphone because no such device existed. But all the other people, they try to find pain points and try to find technology. And if existing technology can solve the problem, then that will be enough because all they want to do is, make a product and satisfy the people that want to use the program. That's business. Okay. So this is a slide which I borrowed from my sensei in Tokyo Science University. And according to his class, the commercialization is basically about two things. One is to make customers, and the other is to make products. So in order to do a good commercialization of anything, of course you need to make a product, but also you need to develop the customer base. And regarding to like activities within a company, the activities related to product making is research and development and production. And the activities related to developing customers is generally called like marketing. And you need both to make a good product. There are two approaches to do commercialization. One is product out. So the idea is to make a product, define the specifications of the product, and then translate that and define some values for potential customers, and then present this the supposed values to the market and try to develop a new customer base from that. So, for example, so this TV is nice. So new product, big TV, beautiful, graphics, so on. That will be the specs, and then there should be some customers who will love this kind of TV in their living rooms or maybe classrooms in universities. I don't know. So that will be the value to the customer, and then that'll be used as sort of like marketing. So for like consumer products, it might be like making TV commercials to appeal the new functions of the product, and hopefully there will be a lot of customers who will be interested in the new functions or the new product, and then they'll buy the thing. That's the product out kind of way to develop a new commercialized product or service. The other approach is called market in. In this case, we focus on the customers first. We define problems of actual customers. The problems are then translated to the necessary specifications of the product, and then that will be used to ultimately build the product. So this is the kind of thing that most startup founders or most people that are successful in business are doing on. They focus on what's actually happening here. What are the pain points of customer A or B or C or whatever? And then they try to design a product which will resolve the problems, and then that will ultimately be what we will actually make as a product or service or whatever. Now, I'm not trying to say that this is right and that is wrong or vice versa, because the ideal is to do both parallelly. Well, the first initial step might be a new technology. And then, you develop something, you deliver it to the market, and then the market says things like, maybe, well, this is okay, but maybe I want this kind of thing. And then that will be, returned to this side, and then, it goes on and on and on and on, and there's some like gradual improvement over, of the product. So the initial setup is important, but ultimately what's important is that is to build this loop of feedback from the customer and feedback to the developers and to the product or service. But as I said, typically researchers or engineers or technology-focused people focus too much on this side. So in our case, it was like we focused on accurately dividing videos into story segments. And we brushed that up and we became #1 in the world on that. But that didn't translate to actual customer values. And so especially for these kind of people, they tend to do a little too much work on this and ignore this part. So the loop doesn't exist. They product out to the market. It doesn't sell. And then they kind of give up. You see all those kind of things in like Yodobashi camera. Okay? So the typical research mistakes that we do is we prioritize our own research technology over actual needs. Because we like what we do. I mean, I'm not sure what kind of research you're doing, but I think you're asked before graduation to write up a paper, and make some research presentations, those on, and and this is good because you as a researcher you do need to do what you like to do, but when you consider the next stage, this is not just what we need to do. The second mistake is to from a business standpoint, is to ignore existing solutions which can take care of the customer's problems. I mean, we can build like world #1 technologies if we aspire, put a lot of effort in that research project. But in actual situations, #1 technology is not actually necessary. But we tend to do that because our technology is better from a technical standpoint. I mean, like we're #1 accuracy. So we're better than existing solutions just based on that. But, maybe the existing solutions are a little worse, but they can take care of actual issues a lot better or a lot more efficiently than than the technology that we've developed. The third one was kind of like ignoring unexpected demands. And the reason why we do that is because that's not what we wanted to do. In the introduction of a paper, we say that in recent years this kind of technology has been developing. So there's a need for like I don't know, like analyzing a bunch of videos. And the existing technology does not work because of blah blah blah, and so we propose this technology which can blah blah blah. So we have a story in our minds when we do research. But when you start showing your stuff to actual people, they come up with other ideas, and some of them might actually make sense. But we kind of like say, I mean, like for example, we make a presentation about video analysis technology, and then the other guy says, well, yeah, that's okay, but can you use that to like analyze audio, for example? And the initial response is like, well, I'm a video researcher, so maybe some other day, that kind of thing. But there's a lot of potential in the unexpected comments that come from ordinary people or like non-researcher people. So these are the kind of mistakes that researchers do. As I said, if you just want to write papers, you can ignore all these kind of things. But if you want to take your research to the next step, you need to keep this in mind and try to switch your thinking because that will be the necessity, the necessary attitude for people who want to make useful things from their research. But it's really difficult because mainly two things. One thing is that as a profession, researchers have to make new things. So, like professors in universities want a lot of papers published from research from students, for example. And companies also focus on the number of patents that are submitted from their researchers. So those kind of like KPIs are important, and we need to do this every day. And the second thing is that the researchers typically are distant from actual consumers. So we're the people in the back side of the office doing like programming or experiments, and we rarely have actual connections with potential customers, and because especially in a big company, there's these things called business departments, which are organizations built to engage with actual customers. So there's some kind of trade-off between user-centered innovation, the market-in kind of approach, and technology-focused research. So there's a gap between research and the market, which is expressed in this kind of like expression called river valley sea. So there's the difficulty to develop new business from research is not just the KDDI problem or a Japanese problem. It's a problem that all kinds of people face in the world. So these research, development, commercialization, and ultimately building an industry. Those are like the 4 stages of development. And between those stages, there are like horrifying sounding things like Devil River, Death Valley, and Darwinian Sea. At the end of the day, we would like to build like an industry, like the music distribution industry that was, developed by a lot of people, but ultimately was generated by Apple, by iTunes, and so on, or maybe the smartphone industry or whatever. We all want to do this, but it's kind of like a hefty job for researchers who are working here to take care of everything and ultimately go here. So the question is, how can we do this? Should we do the entire process? The answer to this is actually pretty simple, because we as people we have very limited resources. Basically, the manpower that we can devote to a project, and also time. So one thing is to just focus on what we can do here. So doing good research, especially for students, maybe is very important. But we can, try to go over this first river first, and try to, think about, what will be necessary to develop a practical product. And what we can do here, so this is just the attitudes that is necessary. One is to show off your research and be open-minded, and do not ignore the easy-looking kind of problems during the research phase. So I'll go through this part. First, the show off your research part. The easiest way to do it is to make a demonstration. Demo or die is one of the slogans of MIT Media Labs. It was actually a little older kind of thing, but the idea is that the product or the technology shouldn't just look good on paper. It's always good to showcase the technology in any kind of way. Just make a prototype application if it's in the IT area, or make a crude prototype out of whatever this is, and demo it to anyone. And also, recently, especially in the IT area, it's becoming easier and easier to spread it to the world. So simply what we can do is to make an app, put it up on IT, the App Store or like Google Play, and spread it. So people can actually try it, and maybe you can collect some comments from them. And the other idea is that to whom we do this. I think a lot of you are, at least have the kind of experience to show the research, demo application to your colleagues, like, within the university, for example. That is important because the kind of feedback that can be collected from those kind of people will contribute to brush up the technology of your research. But in order to go over the river, you need to try to show it to non-relevant people, like people not in academia, maybe business people like me, or maybe non-tech friends. I mean, people who can't set up their own PCs, for example, but may have different interests from you, or maybe potential customers if you have the opportunity. So, and when you start explaining things to these kind of people, you realize that you're going to have to change the story of the explanations, because all the the typical story in the introduction section of the technical papers will not make sense to those kind of people. So you get to discover a lot of things just by showing off your technology. The second item is to be open-minded. This is kind of like related to the unexpected needs. So people say things, a lot of things, when you start demoing to them, and some people might give you like really critical kind of comments, which don't feel good. But those kind of comments actually are good suggestions to discover actual needs from actual people. So keep this in mind. And also don't dwell on your initial idea. I mean, researchers do devote a lot of effort in developing their technology. And so in their mind, it's 100% complete, and it will take care of a lot of people's problems, but that's usually not the case. So the more effort you put in a project, the more you would like not to change what you want to do, but a small changes might work for that. And I think no product or no service in the world right now has succeeded from the initial idea. So people release services, they get a lot of comments, they do some improvements, and then it gradually develops in, and people just start to notice it when the service has like 1 million users, for example. So there's a lot of work upcoming to that point. So all people do this actually, they improve all the time. And also you should not ignore the easy-looking kind of problems. In order to write a research paper, you have to come up with a difficult problem and solve it, because that's what's required in papers. But there are other things which must be solved in order to deploy new technology to the market. So, and those are the actual problems, the problems that need to be solved. The problems that maybe paper reviewers are not interested in, but you need to take care of those as well if you want to make something useful. So those are the three things that in my opinion will be necessary to go over the river. This point. Now to go from here to here might be a different story, because unless you have a lot of money and a lot of resources, you can do this by yourself. But typically that's impossible. So so if you're like aspiring to go to this or maybe this, you can't do it by yourself. You need to find people who can take the technology and bring it to this part. So people like Mark Zuckerberg, they look like kind of geniuses who develop everything by themselves, but that's not the case, right? They received funds from like venture capitalists. Those people build a team to develop not just the technology, but also, for example, the interface, and the business model, those kind of things. Those are things that typically cannot be taken care of by one person. So the idea is, if you can go successfully over this, the next idea is to try to find people who can take the technology and bring it to the next stage. Okay. So this is basically what I wanted to say, but I'll just introduce a story about what actually a success that we did for our company. So in the first slide, I talked about my social media analysis research. This was the prototype that we made based on that technology. So the idea is that we built a technology which can analyze tweets on Twitter, and then present the results in a graphical interface like this. And for example, if you can input a keyword and just click and find how the population is responding, how the population is feeling about that product or keyword. And so it does like typical text classification. So in this case, there's like for this topic, it was like 24% positive, 19% negative, and 57% neutral. Also, we developed some technologies to automatically analyze the tweets and find out who the user is. So we just by analyzing like 20 tweets, we can approximate their gender, their approximate age, maybe their their occupations, where they live. Those kind of things are appearing in the little tweets. So we can not just present positive, negative, but also we can show as a result that maybe young women are feeling positive about a keyword like KDDI, for example. So that was the kind of thing we did. So we were initially thinking that this will be a good tool for market analysis, and there are people within our company who do this as daily work, right? So they search for like AU, nantoka, and then on Twitter, and they get a ton of tweets, but it's impossible for them to make an observation from those results. So we thought this tool would help their everyday business. This is a photo from a internal exhibition that the KDDI research does every half year within our company. So it's an exhibition where we show off our technology to the people in KDDI headquarters and try to find customers for our technology. And this is me here. I'm sorry for the low resolution. And this is what we were showing to Tanaka-san here, which is the previous CEO of KDDI Corporation. So he's pretty big. I mean, people just have to surround him because because he's an important person. So we showed off the Twitter technology. Back then, we were building this kind of GUI to provide a lot of information about the customers, the users of Twitter who were tweeting about something. His first response was he wanted to use social media to monitor the quality of our network. So au is KDDI's brand. We are one of the 3 mobile phone carriers in Japan, and there's not a lot of difference between NTT Docomo and SoftBank and KDDI on the application side. So the most important issue in our CEO's mind back then was the quality of the network. We didn't want people to quit us because the antenna was, there was not communication in a specific area, and so we have, of course, a lot of servers and systems to detect when something goes wrong in our network, but information from social media might also be important to detect some faults in the network, or maybe to learn about some details about what's actually going on. We can detect if, for example, the network is disconnected in a specific area, but we cannot know the actual experience of the consumers that in that area. So he had this kind of he came up with this kind of idea, and in Japanese companies you don't say no to CEOs. So we had to do this. Okay, and then we started trying to jump over the river, and then all of these kind of issues occur. One thing is that on the business department, they don't want to take care of suspicious programs that researchers make. I'm not sure how many of you know this programming language called Python. It's like an open source programming language typically used for machine learning. But the business people want support for everything. So they didn't. Ultimately, we convinced them to use Python, but there was complaints about that. Also, since we needed to connect with the internal network, not just the internet, which was kind of like a new thing back then, because the intranet should be the intranet and not be connected to the outer world, because all kinds of things might occur. So those kind of negotiations were going on. Ultimately, we had to get rid of a lot of functions which were not necessary for monitoring networks. And also, this is kind of like a strange story, because the CEO said he wanted this, so we should just develop it and hand that system over to the business department. But the business people have to also need to be convinced that this system will be useful for them to take care of it. So we did a lot of negotiation. We held a ton of meetings with a bunch of departments to say that this technology will be working. It will detect network faults. It might work for other things as well. So we had to build a customer base within our company to get this thing approved. So all these kind of things. These these things will not appear in research papers, of course, but this is necessary. And we didn't know that until we were forced to do this. So I'll bring up this figure again. In the initial stages, what we were doing was kind of like product out approach. And the specs we were defining was that we can analyze user demographics, like the genders, approximate age, so on, and also we can highlight keywords like you saw in the screenshot. And then the customer values will be the detailed analysis of a product or service, and we can even analyze that based on user demographics, and more detailed analysis about like young with females, blah blah blah. That was the kind of thing that we had in mind. Actually, the actual problems that KDDI as a company had was real-time monitoring of mobile networks, plus maybe some detailed information about what's going on. And there were and still are a lot of like existing products which provide like Twitter analysis as a package, but they cost a lot. So those were the things that they had in mind. So what we did was we tuned our dictionary to be more focused on carrier-specific keywords, like in Japanese, tsunagaru. Those are like not interesting for normal people, but very interesting for people who had this in mind. And also we built a specific GUI which is more focused on showing the results in a way so that the network management people can understand in an instant. And I'll skip a lot of things, but currently it's working very well, and it's utilized by people who are working like 24 hours a day to monitor our network. So these are the fancy things. Our system actually doesn't appear in this slide, but there's a lot of people working in front of big displays to monitor the network. But in case something goes wrong, they rely on a lot of things like alerts and systems from all over the place, but they also rely on Twitter if that's necessary. So it might be a small contribution, but we're actually helping. We're successful in developing technology that helps the core business of KDDI. So in our perspective, this is a rare successful research project because it actually got deployed and is still being used in our company. And the reasons why I think it succeeded was a combination of a lot of things. First of all, we showed it off to a lot of people, but also we showed it to the right person at the right time. So doing exhibitions like in the picture that I saw, that requires a lot of effort. And of course, you need to build the app, you need to build a demonstration story, you need to rehearse a lot, those kind of things. But by doing that, we were able to discover an actual issue and drive the project into a direction which is actually useful for our company. And we were kind of forced into that kind of situation, but we did not avoid the non-technical boring issues that were necessary to deploy the product. Things about negotiations about the Python and making the whole process more efficient. That was another thing because researchers tend to buy some fancy GPU, CPU, high spec kind of computers, but the business people try to reduce this cost as much as possible. So we needed to also make the algorithm more efficient than it originally was. Those kind of things are not fancy, but needed to be done, and we did that. And also, I was fortunate because we were able to find some team members who were willing to take care of those kind of things. So a team of researchers will not typically succeed in this kind of thing because they would like to focus on developing new things instead of developing old things. That's generally speaking. But we were able to find some people who were actually having some kind of fun taking care of all those endless meetings with business departments and so on. So it was not that big of a team. I mean, like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 people. But they were like interfaces, and they were like the researchers who were developing the technology. There were some people who were performing as the interface between research and business, and then and then we were able to hire a bunch of people who took care of the development procedures. So these 3 issues were essential in driving the success of the project. So as a summary of the first part, is the objective was to how to develop innovation from research. And so what is essential for innovation is to find actual problems of actual users. Or maybe not assume that the problems that we assume during the research stage are actually do actually exist. So that's one thing. That's the problem. The second thing is about what researchers can or should do to innovate. The first thing is to be aware of actual people. The academia is a weird world because there's people who are very interested in technology, maybe not as interested in the real world as people should be, but there are that's the minority. The majority are the people who are using services, living their daily lives. So we need to be aware of those kind of people, and also try to show off the research as much as possible to hopefully these kind of people, if you have the opportunity to do that. And this might be difficult, especially in the research stage, because the technology is not there yet. But at least keep in mind that developing technology into business or other things, you need to find people to help your procedures beyond research. And the last message is to get out of your comfort zone. The reason why I was started after Silicon Valley, the reason why I joined things like Shido and so on, was that I was becoming too comfortable in this part, because basically I just interacted with academia people and maybe some company researchers in the same area. And but after this I realized that you can only discover actual things if you go out of the accustomed world that I'm in. So I'm like I'm not sure if I can be evaluated as an innovator yet, but just doing things, joining these kind of projects. It was a good opportunity because I was able to meet a lot of companies, people from companies that I would never have related with by just doing research. And also I started, the reason why I started going to universities is because of the same experience. So go all the way back. So getting out of the comfort zone is uncomfortable, but I think it depends on where you think you are in terms of your career, but this will be an important mindset in order to do big things in the world. Okay. Okay. So this is the end of the first part of the research of the lecture. And I have successfully finished on time for the first time. So thank you for this part. If you have any questions, I have a couple minutes before 11. So okay. No questions, no comments. Okay. Okay, then yeah.
How do you think the importance of getting a PhD influence your career?
Pardon?
Like you got a PhD, you said how do you think that really helps your career as a researcher in TDI? Getting a PhD.
Yeah.
How does that help you?
Oh, oh wow. Okay. It helps actually. Well, it didn't help to raise my salary, if that's your concern. But I think this PhD thing. I don't know what you're thinking right now, but this is, generally speaking, very good, especially in the universal market. I mean, in Japan, there's a lot of opinions about the value of the PhD, but this is a degree that shows you that you were able to develop a field, and at least from a research standpoint, was able to come up with not just one solution, but maybe several solutions. New technologies to solve that field. So even when I go to Silicon Valley and I do exchange name cards, for example, it says PhD or in my case doctor engineer on it, and they say, "Whoa, yeah," and that's looks good, and I think it's good. Because they maybe there's a lot of stories about global companies who maybe don't care about like what kind of university you graduated from, those kind of things, because they evaluate on your actual competencies, for example. But that's half true. A lot of people actually do look at those, whether or not a person has a degree or whatever university they're from. So when I got this, it was kind of like half obligation, because I was accumulating a few papers and during this stage, and I was lucky because KDDI Research as a company was encouraging people to get the degrees. So, and I didn't think about how valuable it was back then, because it's kind of like the environment made me do this. But afterwards, it's you gain at least some kind of respect if you have this. So in that case, I think it was important. Yeah. Is that okay for an answer? Yeah. Is that okay from the professor's side? Huh?
Is it only the respect that you get?
Well, as I said, it didn't directly pay to my salary.
Practical.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Well, of course. I mean, like, well, it depends. I mean, like, I didn't get my PhD by going to a university. My PhD was based on my research achievements. Like the papers that I accumulated during this phase. So I didn't like enter the university to get the degree. So my experience might be kind of different. But anyway, I mean, to receive this, you need to initiate research projects, find solutions by yourself. As a company, we do have some staff to support research, of course, but building a story, building a solution, and expressing it in a understandable way. Those are the skills that are necessary to write papers, of course, and get PhDs, of course. But those kind of skills, maybe the specific like programming skills, those kind of things might not be necessary in later on. But the general way of thinking about research is applicable in any kind of like business domain. So, yeah. To follow up on your comment, yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
So you introduced saying, so what engineers usually tend to grasp on their own the treasured ideas and
Yeah.
the contribution of some technical stuff. But then you said that, but that's not quite. I think people are not really interested in that. You need to apply to your own. That I totally agree. But okay, if it's only within yourself, you can convince yourself, right? Okay, so this is important. So although I spent many nights writing this code, the technical issue is not the most important part. It's more what you can realize in the world. But you can convince yourself. But actually, if you're in a company or maybe even in some labs, this is done by several people. In that case, you probably need to convince some other guys who actually did the work, stayed up like several nights.
Yeah.
And then that could be a bit difficult because it's not within yourself. You can't really
Yes.
totally convince this guy. You still need to keep this guy's motivation. So how would you do that as a manager?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sorry, this is. The easiest way to do this is to have people like this. I wasn't convinced, to be honest, about this. I mean, yeah, I understand the needs, but it sounded like a boring thing. So this is the easiest way. But as a manager, I mean, if I don't have like the position to convince like all the people around me, I would have so I'm not saying I'm good at that, but I think what we need to do is explain why we should do this, because research-wise, there's various interests. But when you look at the company or the society, for example, there's a lot of other reasons why we should be doing this instead of this. And from a management standpoint, if I can explain that in a way that is understandable, a lot of people will say, well, yeah, okay. Yeah. So that's, I think, the one thing that I keep in mind when I try to steer projects in a different way. And as I said, there's a trade-off. I mean, as a research company, we have like goals about how many patents we should submit during the semester, those kind of things. And I have to ask to do. I have to ask people to do both in situations if that's necessary, which is, they complain about that all the time. But it's my work to try to balance out that as much as possible. I mean, doing all the things simultaneously is impossible. So, making the story and also organizing the tasks so that they won't get sick during the process is necessary, and that's the management techniques that I need to do. I'm not sure if I'm good at that or not. Yeah. Okay. Okay, then maybe we can take a 10-minute break until like 11:15, and then we'll start with the second part. Yeah. Thank you. If it's okay, I would like to start the second part of my lecture, which is about some ongoing research project, ongoing research project that's going on in my research group right now. So I will introduce about the research project, and then the latter part of the lecture will be a group discussion between you guys, and maybe if I can manage my time correctly, I would like to have at least some of you make a short explanation about the results of the discussion. So first, I would like to introduce about the AI agent dialogue system that we are working on right now. So, how many of you have these kind of things? Do you know what these are? Yeah. Sort of. No, these are not like water bottles. These are smart speakers. So this is Amazon Echo, Google Home, and Line Clover. And for example, in the middle one, you say, "Okay, Google," and then you say something, and then it will reply with voice. This is has been a recent development in our technology domain. So things like these smart speakers or chatbots have been very active these days. So how many of you have actually used this before? No? No, good. So you know what it can do, right? Sort of. Yeah.
But I think actually the Google Home
Yeah.
Mini, I have a Mini.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
all very small.
Yeah. That's the point. So the issues of the current technology is that it can only handle simple things, like you can ask about, I don't know, the weather, for example, and it will say like, it's sunny, that kind of thing. So ultimately, you run out of things to do, and it becomes a music player, for example. So that's the situation. So it's not like it can't do like actual like conversations. So what I mean by here not suitable for daily use is that when you have things to ask to the system, to the smart speaker, that's the only situation that you will actually want to speak to it. And the response is not exciting, interesting. So there's a lack of variety. So researchers, engineers, we like these kind of devices. So we, when they get on sale, we buy it. In our case, the company, supports that kind of thing, and we buy it, and then we play around with it for a couple of days, and then it's just there. That's the typical situation. I have heard that people, or households with small kids, they love these kind of things. But what they do is they ask the speaker to talk like an animal, and so they say ask for a pig's voice, for example, in the smart speaker says, "Oh," and they do that all day. That's what I hear. But anyway, that's not conversation. That's just a toy, and that's the limitations of the current technology right now. So our research, what we want to do, is to develop a dialogue AI which can actually talk continuously to with the user, and this is actually my master's thesis was about spoken dialogue systems. It was like 20 some years ago, so the technology is way different. But this theme about continuous chat with the system is still a difficult research item. And in order to do this, what we did was we focused on news as the main topic of the chat, because news is news. It's new every day, and that will take care of the boring part of smart speakers. And since we have a background in social media analysis, we thought we can utilize that to enhance the conversation. I'll show you a video after this. It's only in Japanese, but I think you'll get an idea of what I'm talking about. And so this is the core engine, but we also have built a daily chat engine, which is based on scenarios which are implemented in Google Home or Apple's Siri, for example. Little snippets, occasionally, some of the weird things that Google Home or Siri talks about is being written in like articles about Google Home said this stupid joke kind of thing, but that's man-made, and crowdsourcing is also man-made, but by utilizing the power of the crowd, we can accumulate a large-scale chat scenario, which consists of like millions of utterances, and by using that, we can also build a continuous chat. So, and why we want to do this as a company is that we want to build an engagement with the users. So, so as a company, KDDI has a what we call a good touch point between the user and the company, because we are providing smartphones to our customers. So that's one thing. But things like this, which is still under development, but if this succeeds, and if this spreads in like normal households, this will be another interface, touch point between a company like us and our customers. And if we can have the user enjoy using this every day, then then this might be used as a channel for us to reach out to the customers. And also through conversation, we can understand a little more about the customers than just looking at their data, for example. And looking at their data has a lot of privacy issues, and we do take care of that very seriously. But there's only a limited aspect of the user we can understand through data. For example, we cannot know if the user is hungry or not through sensory information. It's much more easier to ask the person if he or she is hungry. That's so understanding the inner parts of the user might be better if we can utilize these kind of dialogue systems. So anyway, I'll show you a short video about this. The conversation, unfortunately, is in Japanese, but.
何が知りたい？最近のニュース。フルカウントによると、MLB 最年長イチローのスーパー補給にメディア驚嘆、苦労の奇跡。ワオらしいよ。すごい。
So first he introduced the news article, which Google Home can do.
すごすぎる、イチロー選手。すごい。いや、ずっとすごかったわけですが。レジェンドだもんね。守備と走塁は本当に衰え知らず。このまま頑張ってほしいな。 取ってなかったらホームラン。
So the following comments, this is just like casual chat, which is actually very difficult for a system to do. Because it needs to understand, what kind of things that the user is talking about, which does not contain that much kind of information. And also, the system kind of looks like a human in a way, because it's not just introducing news, but also introducing some kind of like opinions about the user comments and the news. And I'll proceed a little
スー
more.
パーキャッチ。一郎。各実況の興奮した様子が面白いですね。
私も思わず声を上げちゃったよ。
スポーツ観戦はしますか？
And then it switches to the daily chat mode, which is based on crowdsourcing
どんなスポーツで
scenarios.
も見に行きますか？
そうだね。でもテレビ観戦も多いよ。
私もテレビ観戦で
So this part, which if you don't understand the Japanese, it doesn't look like a big deal, right? I mean, it's just chatting with the system. But in order to do this seriously, this requires a lot of like complicated technologies, because typical dialogue systems can only respond to a question and answer. That's one turn. And then when you send the next statement, the system it's difficult for a system to understand what was going on previously before that. So the man here is talking about basically the same topic, and the conversation goes on and on and on. And this can only be done right now if the scenario is built so that the conversation will continue. So most existing research focus on how the system can answer to a question or a statement from the user. And so the current efforts are focusing on how to respond to the question that's accepted. The next stage, so what we're trying to do here is to have a continuous conversation. So ultimately we want this conversation to go on and on until, I don't know, the end of the day, for example. But that's really difficult. That's a really difficult, technology. That's still not done yet. So, okay. So, this is just a conceptual figure of the system. This part is the news dialogue engine here. So sorry, I couldn't translate everything into Japanese, but I'll try to explain here. So the first part was about news, and the article was not just randomly selected from the web. We utilized the Twitter analysis that I introduced in the previous sections. So what we're doing here is that we're collecting news articles. We're also collecting the users' comments, tweets about the article. And then, for example, the amount of comments or the amount of positive or negative comments, that is translated into a score, which illustrates the sort of like the interestingness of the news. As an input, we also can use the demographics of the user. So in this case, the user is a male. He's in 30s. His hobby is his interest is in sports, so on. And by combining this demographics and the demographic analysis of the people that are tweeting about news, we can select the article which is most relevant to the user. So that's the first step. The next step is that, we selected a news article that's interesting for the user. Then next, the user can, say comments like "sugoi desu ne" or those kind of things to the system, which doesn't contain that much information, but that's typical in human-to-human conversations. So we want the system to respond like a human. And we are still doing ongoing work on how to automatically generate utterances based on like deep learning technologies. But for now, since that's very difficult, what we do is we refer to the tweets that were related to this news. And we do a little analysis about the sentiment analysis, like positive, negative, of the user utterances. And then we try to select comments, user tweets, about the article. And so if the utterance, if the user utterance was presumed as positive, we try to select positive comments from Twitter and use that as a reply to the user. So if we do that, the system can continue talking with the user about this specific article, on and on and on. So the idea is, as I said, is to develop a continuous conversation between the user and the AI. The other thing here is the crowdsourcing part, and in this part, he was talking about like viewing sports, and on and on. So we have a sort of like a tree-sized, tree-shaped scenario, which starts from the first question, and we have a couple of responses, and then there's some couple of responses to the question. We have like a 1.6 million archive of structured utterances, which is used in this part. And by going back and forth between the news dialogue and the daily chat, we can continue the conversation with the user, which doesn't look that fancy, but if we succeed, the technology can be applied to all kinds of situations. So the current smart speaker can only give information about the news or the weather or some very specific tasks like making reservations for hotels or flights. But that's just from our viewpoint, it's just a system, an assistant, which might be useful, but the user will not want to talk to in their daily life. So we want to build this and use this as a core engine to support whatever application we want to provide to the user through the spoken dialogue channel. So this is the introduction of what we're working on. Right? So do you have any questions about this technology first? Are you interested? Okay. If not, I would like because you need to keep. I would like you to keep this in mind about the group work that you'll be doing after this. Okay. So this is a review of the first part of the lecture. I stated about what will be necessary for researchers to innovate, to make commercialized products from the research. And you might be thinking right now, is that does the technology here correlate with actual problems of actual users? Okay, and which is a good question actually. The reason why we're focusing on a non-objective kind of chat is because it can be used in all kinds of situations. But we haven't specified the situation yet. We have some candidates, but we don't know, what kind of situations in which this technology can be used for. So sorry if I gave you the expression that I was really, have achieved the innovation, methodology of research is because this is very difficult, and we have a lot of people working on this technology, which are focused on on the technical parts of the research, but we're still having problems to find the actual situation in which this technology can be ultimately implemented. So also I said, showing off research to a lot of people will be necessary for us to ultimately build a business from our research, and that's what I just did to you. Okay. So so after this, I would like to. How many people are here today? 1, 2, 14. Okay. 3 groups maybe. I would like to divide you into 3 groups, and I'm devoting my precious time for this lecture. So I would like to collect ideas from intelligent students like you about how we can develop this into an actual service. That's the goal of the second part of my lecture. Okay. I'm really and at the end of the day, I hope I can bring back some good ideas which you provide to us. If you want to, preserve your rights, we can negotiate with that. But anyway, so I want to, have a lot of fun discussing about this. The following slides are about a framework which is used to develop a product for with actual goals. So this is called the Value Proposition Canvas, VPC from this point on. How many of you have seen this before? No? Okay, so there are a few. Okay, so so for the people who know about this, I think it's pretty clear. The idea is this is the overall framework of this, and it's mainly composed of 2 parts. One is called the customer profile, which is here, and then the other part is the value map, here, and this is said to be a good framework to develop products and services which will meet actual customer needs. Okay. The right side of the VPC is the customer profile. In this part, we are first supposed to define the segment of the customer. So as a big company, we would like to say that this technology or this service will be used by millions of people, which is too broad, because a technology which is useful for everyone typically is not used by anyone. So the idea is to focus on a specific segment, and maybe it's something like young female students, for example, or elder people who are living alone, something like that. But the more specific, the better. Is the typical customer segment. This part is to define the job about what the customer wants to achieve through this product, or in usual daily life, for example. I'll explain. I'll give up I'll show you an example later on, and these are the potential needs of the customer, which are defined as gains and pains. Customer pain is the bad things that the customer experience when they take care of their jobs. The gain is the unexpected good things that the customer would want when they take care of their jobs. So that's the basic explanation of the VPC, the customer profile side of the VPC. the left side of the map, of the canvas, is the value map. And ultimately, we want to design the value proposition of the product and service. The value proposition can be composed of the pain reliever and the gain creator. The pain reliever is as written. This is the functions of the service that will resolve the pains of the customer. The gain creators are the functions which provide the gains that the customer needs. The ideal situation is a perfect fit between the customer and the service. So if the gain creators match the gains of the customer and the pain reliever matches is able to take care of the pains of the customer, then the product is the perfect fit. The product can take care of the customer's job, provide gains, and relieve the pains of the customers. And at the end of the day, the customer will buy or use the service. I'll show you an example. This is Face ID on iPhone X 10. Sorry. You know what this is, right? Yeah. Okay. So this is a pretty innovative kind of service. The service itself is authentication by using face recognition. And this is the new service based on core technology, which the core technology is, all the fancy sensors that are in the iPhone 10 and the capability to identify the face based on the sensor information provided from the smartphone. That's the new service based on core technology. The customer's job is to have a simple and secure authentication. That's the job that the customer wants to take care of. The gain will be the easiness to use it, and the pain will be a lot of things. For example, like in existing password types of things, authentication, defining a good password is a pain. You don't want to go 1, 2, 3, 4 because anyone will be able to hack you, your smartphone. Also, if there is no function like this, people can grab your smartphone and do all sorts of things, post weird things on Facebook, those kind of things, which is not good for the user, for the customer. So these are the pains that the customer would have if they didn't have this function or this service, and the gain will be the very easy to use authentication. The gain creator of Face ID is the easy authentication by just looking at the screen. So it's much more efficient than having to type a complicated password or other things. And the pain reliever is that the face, which is very unique, by using that feature, you provide ultimate security to your smartphone. And also, you don't need to come up with a password because it's your face. So this case is very simple. Is a value proposition canvas of Face ID, which has a good match between the customer gain and the gain creator, and the pain and pain reliever. Okay. Okay. So the exercise part will be. And I'm asking you a difficult question because we've been thinking about this all the time, but we've run out of ideas. So, and now it's your turn to come up with a application service using the Dialogue AI technology that I explained in the first part of this lecture. I think I have like. Yeah, and in the following minutes, I'll ask you to group and have a discussion within the group to make a value proposition canvas for the proposal. So the idea is to define customer. It can be anyone. Typically, it's good to think about a specific person around you. Not just the vague kind of like target user situation, and think about a job which the user, the customer can achieve by chat. So the idea is to first find actual user or issue or situation in which the Dialogue AI can be useful, and we want to start from this side to find a situation which maybe this kind of service can be useful for, and analyze the pains and gains of the target, and define the pain reliever and gain creator of the proposal. So this is what I want you to do in the remaining minutes of this lecture. I'll talk about some basic conditions. First of all, I do know that you're probably not aware about the recent technologies about spoken language understanding and speech recognition and dialogues, those kind of things. You can imagine that some things exist right now, or maybe it would be very helpful for us if you can come up with some essential technologies that need to be developed to be used in the proposal. That might be a good hint for the next research that we should do. So, but anyway, you don't need to think seriously about what is capable right now, and also you don't need to consider business issues like market size, development cost, how much revenue this is going to need. As a corporate, we need to think about this at the end of the day, but this is not necessary. So you can come up with any kind of crazy application, regardless of any business model, and just give me a specific situation in which Dialogue AI can be used. So that's the goal of the group discussion. Okay, and I'll just show you this, and I have to give you a report about this lecture, and the report will be two. One, the first part is to describe the results of the discussion of your group. And the second part will be the overall report, comments or opinions about my talk in my lecture today. So that's the report that I will ask you to hand in after this lecture.